Lorenzo Ricci sat alone at his shadowed corner table in La Perla, the high-end restaurant he'd silently claimed as his own 9 months earlier. To the outside world it was elegance personified: low amber lighting, clinking crystal, the scent of truffle and sea salt in the air. To his world it was territory. A perfect front where cash flowed clean and secrets stayed buried. At 35, Lorenzo wore power like a second skin. Tall, powerfully built, the black button-down shirt stretched across his chest and arms in a way that made people notice without wanting to be noticing. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and that thin scar tracing down the left side of his face, close enough to his mouth that it moved when he spoke. It didn't make him less handsome. It made him harder to look away from. He scanned the floor with the lazy confidence of a man who owned every inch of it. His soldiers blended in, 2 leaning at the bar, 1 near the door, ready but relaxed. The waitresses moved in their fitted black dresses, graceful, efficient, untouchable. Especially untouchable. That was the rule Lorenzo had carved into stone the day he took over. No one laid a hand on the waitresses. Not his crew. Not the connected guests. Not him. Ever. No flirting, no late-night invites, no exceptions. He'd broken that rule once. Years ago. Let a woman in too close. Let himself want. It ended in blood and betrayal that almost buried him. He'd sworn never again. Desire was weakness. Weakness got you killed. The women who worked here felt the line without being told twice. They kept their distance, eyes lowered, voices soft around him. All except one. Sophia Grant. For weeks on staff, and she already moved like the room belonged to her. 28. Warm deep brown skin that seemed to drink in the low light. Full mouth. Thick curls swept into a high ponytail that brushed her back when she turned. And a body, Christ, the uniform hugged every curve without mercy. Hips that shifted naturally when she walked. The kind of figure that made conversations pause mid-sentence. Lorenzo had registered her the first shift, filed her under beautiful, keep it professional, and moved on. Tonight, something cracked. She was at a corner booth of rowdy investment bankers, expensive watches, loud laughs, 4th bottle of Barolo. One of them, red-faced and bold, slid his hand up the back of her thigh as she reached across to pour. The room didn't stop, but Lorenzo's blood did. Sophia froze for half a heartbeat. Then she turned, slow, deliberate, and looked down at the hand on her leg. Her expression didn't change, no panic, no pleading smile, only calm assessment. She said something too low for anyone else to catch. The man's smirk died. His fingers sprang open like she'd burned him. She straightened, smoothed her dress once, and walked away. Shoulders back. Chin level. Hips swaying just enough to remind every man watching exactly what he couldn't have. Lorenzo's pulse hit hard behind his ribs. Heat coiled low and fast, dangerous, unfamiliar. He forced his eyes to the ledger in front of him, but the numbers blurred. She passed his table seconds later, close enough that the faint warmth of her body brushed his space. Close enough that her scent, something spiced and warm, like vanilla rubbed into skin, slid straight into his lungs. She didn't rush past. Didn't avert her eyes. Sophia looked directly at him. Not a glance. A stare. Dark eyes locked on his, unblinking. Fearless. They traced the line of his scar slowly, deliberately, then dragged back up to meet his gaze. Her lips parted, just barely, like she was measuring him the same way he measured everyone else. The air went thick, electric. Lorenzo felt it hit him square in the chest, then lower. His fingers tightened around the stem of his glass until the crystal creaked. 4 seconds. 5. Long enough for him to register the soft rise of her chest under the dress. Long enough for Raw want to slam into him so hard his jaw locked. She broke it first, tilting her head in the smallest acknowledgement, almost mocking, then kept walking, ponytail swinging against her back. Lorenzo didn't move. Didn't breathe right until the kitchen door swung shut behind her. He sat there long after closing, alone in the dim restaurant, staring at nothing. Her eyes still burned behind his. The curve of her mouth. The way her body had moved past him like a dare. He dragged a rough hand over his face, breathing out a low, pissed-off curse. He never let a woman stay in his head. Not for a second. Tonight, Sophia Grant wasn't leaving. And that terrified him more than any gun ever had. Lorenzo told himself it was routine. The next evening, he sat in his upstairs office after closing, the restaurant empty below. He pulled up the security feeds on the multiple screens. Standard procedure, he reasoned. Check for slip-ups, watch for faces that didn't belong, make sure nothing got stolen. But his eyes went straight to her. Sophia was finishing her shift, wiping down tables in the far section. The black dress clung to her in all the ways it shouldn't when she bent over, reached high, or twisted to grab a cloth. Every movement looked effortless, but Lorenzo felt his throat go dry watching it. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and didn't look away. She laughed at something one of the bartenders said. Head thrown back, real laugh, not the polite one she gave customers. The sound came through the audio feed clear and low. It hit him harder than it should have. He switched cameras to follow her into the staff break room. Watched her pour herself a glass of water, lean against the counter, scroll on her phone. Simple things. Normal things. But the way she stood, hip cocked, one hand in her hair, freeing those thick curls from the ponytail, made heat pool low in his stomach. Lorenzo shifted in his chair, annoyed at himself. This wasn't security. This was something else. Over the next week, it became a pattern he refused to name. He'd finish his real work early, tell his driver to wait, and stay late reviewing footage. Always the same excuse. Always the same screen. He learned her habits without trying. She arrived 10 minutes early, always through the side door. She hated the salmon special, made a small face every time someone ordered it. She danced a little, just a sway of her hips, when she thought no one was looking in the kitchen corridor. She bit her bottom lip when she concentrated on counting tips. And every night, when she finally left, coat pulled tight against the December chill, Lorenzo sat in the dark office long after her car pulled away, trying to shake the ache she left behind. His men started noticing. Marco, his second, mentioned it casually one morning over coffee. You've been here late a lot, boss. Everything good? Lorenzo's reply was flat. Just keeping an eye on things. Marco nodded, but the look he exchanged with Vito across the table said they weren't buying it. They noticed the schedule too. Lorenzo, who usually only came in for big meetings or to greet certain guests, now showed up on nights that lined up perfectly with Sophia's shifts. Tuesdays. Thursdays. Weekends. Never missed one. Vito joked about it once, careful tone but smirking eyes. Place runs smoother when you're around, I guess. Lorenzo shut it down with a look that could freeze blood. Vito didn't bring it up again. But the damage was done. They knew something was off. And that made Lorenzo's skin crawl. Then came the night it got worse. Busy Friday. The restaurant packed. Lorenzo sat at his usual table, nursing a drink he barely touched, eyes tracking Sophia as she worked the floor. She was in her element. Smiling, quick, handling a difficult table with calm grace. One of his regulars, an older captain from a connected family, waved her over too many times. Kept her standing there longer than necessary, hand brushing her arm when she poured his wine. Lorenzo's grip on the glass turned white-knuckled. When she finally walked away, she headed toward the back, straight past his table. This time the aisle was narrow, packed with chairs. She had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Her hip brushed his shoulder. Just a second of contact. Fabric against fabric. Warmth bleeding through. But it lit him up like a match to gasoline. Sophia paused. Looked down at him. Their eyes locked again, closer this time. He could see the faint sheen on her throat from the heat of the room. Could smell that damn spiced scent on her skin. She didn't apologize for the touch. Didn't move away immediately. Instead, she spoke. Low. Direct. Right there in the middle of the crowded restaurant. You're always watching me. Not a question. A statement. Her voice was steady, almost amused. Like she'd caught him doing something childish. Lorenzo felt every eye in the vicinity flicker toward them. His men, the staff, even a few customers. Heat crawled up his neck. Him. The man no one dared speak to like that. He should have shut her down. One word, and she'd be gone by morning. but his mouth wouldn't form it. Sophia waited a beat, eyebrow raised, then stepped past him, another brush of her body against his arm this time, deliberate or not, and kept walking. Lorenzo sat frozen. Exposed. His heart hammered so hard he was sure the table vibrated. Marco, sitting at the bar, stared openly now. Vito pretended not to look, but his shoulders shook with silent laughter. Lorenzo downed the rest of his drink in one burn. He'd built an empire on control. One woman, just one, had looked him in the eye in front of his own people and called him out. And instead of anger, all he felt was raw, painful want. He stayed until closing that night. Watched the feeds again. But this time, when she glanced up at a camera in the break room, like she knew he was there, Lorenzo didn't even pretend it was about security anymore. He was in trouble. Deep, dangerous trouble. And he couldn't look away. It was past 1 a.m. on a slow Wednesday. Most of the staff had gone home. The kitchen lights were off, the main floor dimmed to just the soft glow over the bar. Lorenzo had stayed late again. Paperwork, he told Marco when his second asked if he needed anything. Marco had smirked but left without a word. Lorenzo walked the floor one last time, checking locks, making sure everything was secure. He heard faint clinking from the walk-in fridge in the back corridor. Someone still here. He pushed the swinging door to the kitchen and saw her. Sophia was alone, restocking the shelves inside the big stainless steel fridge. The door was propped open with a crate. She was on her toes, reaching high to slide a tray of lemons onto the top rack. The cold air spilled out, raising goosebumps on her arms. Her breath came in small visible puffs. She hadn't heard him yet. Lorenzo meant to turn away. He really did. But he stepped inside the narrow corridor instead, letting the kitchen door swing shut behind him. The space felt smaller with both of them in it, metal shelves on one side, the open fridge on the other. Barely enough room for two people to pass without touching. Sophia turned at the sound of the door. Saw him. Didn't flinch. She lowered her arms slowly, tray in place, and leaned back against the shelf opposite the fridge. The movement pulled the fabric of her dress tighter across her chest. Her curls were loose now, falling around her shoulders from hours of work. "What do you want, Lorenzo?" She used his name. Not Mr. Ricky. Not boss. Just his name, low and even, like she had every right. He hadn't meant to answer. Hadn't meant to stay. But he stepped closer anyway. One step. Then another. Until he was inside the fridge doorway with her. Cold air washing over both of them. The space between them shrank to inches. He could see the quick rise and fall of her chest. Could feel the heat coming off her skin despite the chill. Her scent, warm spice and now the faint citrus from the lemons, filled his lungs. Lorenzo's hands flexed at his sides. Every rule he'd built screamed at him to back out. Walk away. Fire her if he had to. Anything but this. But his body didn't listen. He leaned in, slow, deliberate, until his palm pressed flat against the cold metal shelf right beside her head. Caging her without touching. Close enough that her curls brushed his forearm when she breathed. Her eyes never left his. Dark. Steady. Waiting. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Full. Slightly parted. He could hear her breathing now, faster, matching his own. The air between them felt charged, thick, ready to snap. He tilted his head. Just enough. One more inch and his lips would be on hers. He wanted it so badly his jaw ached. Then he stopped. Froze. His hand curled into a fist against the shelf. Knuckles white. He didn't move forward. Didn't take what was screaming to be taken. The silence stretched, heavy and humiliating. Sophia stared up at him, chest still rising fast, lips still parted. For a long second he thought, hoped, she might lean in first. Might give him the excuse. She didn't. Instead, her expression shifted. The heat in her eyes cooled into something sharp. Disappointed. She let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, but not kind. Then she spoke, voice low and cutting. "You're not dangerous, are you?" Lorenzo felt the words like a slap. She pushed off the shelf, forcing him to step back or touch her. He stepped back. Sophia looked him over slowly, up and down, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. All this power. All these rules. And you still can't take what you want. She shook her head, curls brushing her shoulders. You're just weak. The word hung in the cold air between them. Weak. No one had ever said it to his face. Not once. Not in 35 years. Lorenzo's blood roared in his ears. Anger. Shame. Want, all twisted together until he couldn't tell them apart. Sophia brushed past him, shoulder grazing his chest on purpose this time, and walked out of the fridge. Out of the corridor. He heard her grab her coat and bag from the break room, heels clicking once on the tile, then the side door opening and closing. Silence. He stood there alone in the cold for a long minute, fist still pressed to the shelf. The ache in his body hadn't eased. If anything, it burned hotter. But now it was mixed with something worse. She'd seen the crack in him. And instead of wanting him more, she'd looked at him like he was nothing. Lorenzo slammed the fridge door shut hard enough to rattle the bottles inside. He wasn't weak. He'd prove it. To her. To himself. Even if it destroyed everything he'd built. Lorenzo didn't sleep much after the night in the fridge. Her words kept looping in his head. You're just weak. By morning he'd convinced himself he could fix it. Not by touching her, no, he wouldn't give her the satisfaction of proving her right, but by reminding her who ran this world. Money. Power. Things people didn't say no to. He started small. First came the tips. He had the manager slip an extra $500 in cash into her envelope at the end of her next shift. No note. Just the money. Sophia found it when she counted out in the break room. She stared at the thick stack for a long second, then walked straight to Lorenzo's office upstairs. He was at his desk, pretending to read reports. She dropped the envelope in front of him. I don't want it. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Lorenzo looked up slowly. It's yours. You earned it. No, she said. I earned what everyone else gets. The rest is you trying to buy something. I'm not for sale. She turned and left before he could answer. He sat there staring at the unopened envelope, heat crawling up his neck. 2 nights later he tried again. A promotion, head waitress, better shifts, almost double the pay. The manager called her in, made the offer like it was routine. Sophia smiled politely. Thank you, but I'm good where I am. The manager blinked. It's more money, better hours. I heard you, she said. Answers still no. Word got back to Lorenzo within the hour. He told himself it didn't sting. Then came the necklace. He picked it himself, white gold chain, single teardrop diamond. Simple but expensive. Had it delivered to her locker in a black box, no card. She wore it to work that night. Lorenzo's pulse kicked when he saw the glint at her throat from across the room. For one stupid moment he thought he'd won. Then, at the end of her shift, she walked up to his table while he finished a drink. The place was nearly empty. His men were at the bar, watching without watching. Sophia unclasped the necklace, set it down on his table like it was nothing. It's beautiful, she said, meeting his eyes. But I don't wear things that come with strings. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't make a scene. Just turned and walked out. Marco choked on his drink 10 feet away. Vito looked at the floor, shoulders shaking again. Lorenzo stared at the diamond catching the light on the white tablecloth. He felt every set of eyes in the room on him. Quiet humiliation. The worst kind. Because she hadn't yelled. Hadn't disrespected him in a way he could punish. She'd just refused him. Again. In front of people who feared him. And there was nothing he could do about it. The rumors started the next day. One of the other waitresses, Aria, pretty, ambitious, always lingering a little too long near Lorenzo's table, overheard Sophia telling a coworker about the necklace. By evening it had spread through the staff. The boss was chasing Sophia. Sending gifts. Getting turned down flat. Aria didn't stop there. She let it slip to one of Lorenzo's lower soldiers over drinks after closing. He told someone else. By the end of the week it reached the ears of men who didn't work directly under Lorenzo. Rivals. 2 families on the edge of his territory had been quiet for years, paying respect, keeping the peace. But peace only lasts when people think you're unbreakable. Now whispers moved in back rooms. Ricky's distracted. Got a woman twisting him up. Can't even control his own restaurant. One of his captains brought it to him carefully. Word is the gallows asking questions. Boss. Saying maybe you're slipping. Lorenzo's response was calm. Too calm. Handle it. But inside, the rage simmered. Not at the rivals. At her. Sophia came in for her shift that night like nothing had changed. Smiling at customers. Moving through the tables with that same easy confidence. Lorenzo watched from his corner, jaw tight. She'd taken his money and thrown it back. Taken his power and made it look small. And now his world was starting to crack because of it. He couldn't buy her. Couldn't control her. And the worst part, he still wanted her more than ever. Every refusal just made the hunger sharper. He stayed late again that night. Watched the feeds. Waited until she left. Then he picked up the necklace from his desk drawer, ran his thumb over the diamond, and cursed under his breath. This wasn't over. Not even close. If you're watching this far, drop a like if you're rooting for Lorenzo to break, or for Sophia to keep shutting him down. Subscribe for the next chapter. Things are about to get a lot more dangerous. And comment where you're watching from. Lorenzo needed to feel in control again. The whispers about him had grown louder, little comments from men who owed him money, sideways glances at meetings. All because of one woman who wouldn't take what he offered. So he made sure everyone remembered who he was. It started with a small crew on the docks who'd been shorting payments to one of his lieutenants. Lorenzo showed up personally, unannounced, no warning. The leader, a cocky guy named Enzo who thought distance from the restaurant meant safety, laughed it off at first. Lorenzo didn't raise his voice. He just stepped close, grabbed the man by the throat, and slammed him against a shipping container hard enough to dent the metal. One punch to the gut. Another to the face. Blood on the concrete before anyone could move. His men stood back and watched. When it was over, Enzo was on his knees coughing red, and every other man in the crew was pale. Next time, Lorenzo said quietly, wiping his knuckles on a handkerchief, I won't stop. Word spread fast. By morning, payments were caught up across 3 territories. Men who hadn't shown respect in months were suddenly calling to pledge loyalty again. In public, Lorenzo was ice and steel. Untouchable. In private, he was burning. Because no amount of blood or fear fixed what Sophia had done to him. He still watched the cameras every night she worked. Still felt his body react the second she walked into frame. Still replayed that moment in the fridge, her mouth inches from his, her scent in his lungs, the way she'd called him weak. And now she was making it worse. He noticed it first on a Thursday. Sophia showed up for her shift smiling in a way she never smiled at work. Loose curls down, subtle makeup, a touch of lipstick that made her mouth look even fuller. She kept checking her phone between tables, quick glances with a small curve to her lips. At the end of the night, a man was waiting outside the side door. Tall, clean-cut, early 30s, some corporate type in a wool coat, easy smile. He leaned against a black Audi, hands in pockets. When Sophia came out, coat pulled over her uniform, he straightened and opened the passenger door for her. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm, and got in. Lorenzo watched it all from the upstairs window, hands gripped tight on the sill. The car pulled away. He didn't move for a long minute. The next time it happened, Lorenzo was in the parking lot himself, supposedly checking something with Marco. Really, he'd timed it. Same guy. Same easy smile. This time Sophia walked straight into his arms. The man's hand settled low on her back, too low, pulling her close. She tilted her face up. He kissed her. Not quick. Not polite. A real kiss. Her fingers curled into his coat. Lorenzo felt it like a knife twist in his gut. Jealousy, raw, vicious, blinding, surged so hard he almost stepped out of the shadows. Marco cleared his throat beside him. Boss. Lorenzo didn't answer. Just watched until the Audi's taillights disappeared. It kept happening. She never brought the guy inside. Never talked about him at work. But Lorenzo knew. He saw the mark sometimes, a faint shadow on her neck one night, covered quickly with her hair. The way she walked a little looser some mornings, like she'd been up late. And every time she passed his table now, her eyes met his for a split second longer than before. Not scared. Not submissive. Challenging. Like she knew exactly what she was doing. Like she wanted him to see. The tension between them turned vicious. One packed Saturday, the floor was chaos. Sophia squeezed past his table twice, once with a full tray, once rushing back. Both times her body brushed his, hip against his shoulder, thigh grazing his arm. Each touch was fire. The second time she paused, just a heartbeat, close enough that he felt the heat radiating off her skin, close enough to see her pulse beating fast at the base of her throat. Her eyes dropped to his mouth for the first time. Lingered. Then she moved on. Lorenzo's hand shook when he reached for his drink. He couldn't admit it out loud, not to Marco, not to himself, but the jealousy was eating him alive. He imagined her with that guy. Hands on her. Mouth on her. The sounds she might make. It made him violent in meetings. Short-tempered with his own men. Made him hard in the middle of the night, alone, hating himself for it. Then came the night that broke something inside him. Closing time. Rain pouring outside. Sophia finished her side work early, grabbed her coat, and headed for the door. Lorenzo was already there, standing in the dim hallway near the exit, blocking her path without meaning to at first. She stopped a foot away. Water dripped from the roof outside, loud in the silence. They stared at each other. Her coat was open over the black dress. Wet curls stuck to her neck from the rain. Chest rising fast. Lips parted. He could smell her, warm skin, spice, rain. His hands flexed at his sides. All he had to do was reach. Take. Claim. But her words echoed again, "You're just weak." She lifted her chin. "His waiting outside," she said softly. "Not cruel. Just fact." Lorenzo's jaw locked so tight it hurt. Headlights flashed through the glass door behind her, the Audi pulling up. Sophia didn't move yet. Waited. Daring him. The air between them crackled, thick with everything neither would say. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Her throat. The curve under the coat. He took one step closer. She didn't back away. For one endless second, he thought he might do it. Grab her, push her against the wall, kiss her until she forgot anyone else existed. Then the car horn beeped once, light, polite. Sophia's lips curved. Not quite a smile. She stepped around him, close enough that her breast brushed his chest. "Night, Lorenzo," she whispered. The door opened. Rain rushed in. She walked out into the light, hips swaying, and got into the waiting car. The Audi pulled away slowly. Lorenzo stood in the empty hallway long after the taillights vanished. Breathing hard. Hands in fists. Completely undone. And for the first time in his life, he had no idea how to win. If you're feeling that jealousy burn with Lorenzo right now, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss what he does next, because he's about to snap. Comment below, Team Lorenzo or Team Sophia. And where are you watching from tonight? Lorenzo didn't go home that night. After watching Sophia drive away with that man, her body sliding into the passenger seat, door closing like a final door on him, he stayed in the empty restaurant until the rain stopped. He poured himself a drink he didn't taste, then another. The jealousy sat heavy in his chest, thick and choking. He kept seeing her mouth on someone else's. Her laugh in another man's ear. The way she'd looked at him in the hallway, just daring him, and then walked away. Weak. He slammed the glass down hard enough to crack it. His phone buzzed. Marco checking in. He ignored it. Instead, he went upstairs to the office, locked the door, and pulled out the small safe hidden behind a panel in the wall. Inside were things he never looked at anymore, old photos, a burner phone, a thin gold bracelet. He took the bracelet out. Sat at the desk under the single lamp. And for the first time in 8 years, he let himself remember her. Elena. She'd been 26. Warm brown skin. Thick curls that fell past her shoulders. Full mouth that curved easy when she smiled. Bold eyes that didn't look away. She'd worked in one of his clubs back then, not a waitress, a bartender. Sharp, quick with customers, never took shit from anyone. She'd talk back to him too, the first time they met. Called him out for staring. You gonna order something, or just stand there looking pretty? He'd laughed. Actually laughed. And that was it. They kept it quiet at first. Late nights after closing. Her apartment, not his. Never in public. He told himself it was to protect her. But really, he was protecting himself. Because even then he knew, getting close to someone in his world was a death sentence. Elena didn't care about the rules. She'd tease him about being too serious. Climb into his lap in the back office when no one was around. Whisper things in his ear that made him forget who he was supposed to be. She had a small scar on her collarbone from a childhood accident, she said. He used to kiss it every time they were together. They lasted 6 months. Then one of his rivals, the Gallows, the same family sniffing around now, decided Lorenzo was getting too strong. Needed to be taught a lesson. They couldn't get to him directly. So they took her. Found her walking home from a late shift. Grabbed her off the street. By the time Lorenzo got the call, it was too late. They sent photos first. Then pieces. He went crazy. Tore through half the city. Killed 4 of their men with his own hands before his father pulled him back. The war that followed almost ended the Ricky name. In the end, they made peace. But Elena was gone. And Lorenzo made the rule. No women who worked for him. No touching. No exceptions. Not discipline. Guilt. Punishment. He'd failed her because he let himself want. He wouldn't fail again. He locked the bracelet back in the safe that night 8 years ago and swore he'd never open it again. Until tonight. Because Sophia looked nothing like Elena on paper. Different features. Different life. But the way she moved, confident, unbothered. The way she met his eyes without fear. The thick curls. The warm skin. The refusal to bend. Even the way she bit back, sharp, unafraid. It wasn't coincidence. It was a ghost. And he'd been fighting it since the first night she passed his table. This wasn't new desire. This was relapse. The obsession wasn't about control anymore. It was about trying to fix the past with someone who reminded him of everything he lost. Someone he would destroy all over again if he gave in. Lorenzo closed the safe. Leaned back in the chair. Stared at the dark ceiling. His chest felt raw, exposed. Sophia wasn't just breaking his rule. She was breaking him. And the scariest part, he didn't know if he wanted to stop it anymore. Downstairs, the restaurant was silent. But in his head, Elena's laugh mixed with Sophia's. 2 women. One mistake he couldn't stop repeating. If this twist just hit you in the chest, smash that like button. This story's about to go darker than you think. Subscribe right now. You do not want to miss Chapter 7. Comment, did you see this coming? And who's watching from where tonight? Lorenzo's phone lit up at 1:27 a.m. Silent alarm. La Perla. Motion in the alley. His blood turned to ice. He was already moving, keys in hand, out the door of the penthouse, down the private elevator, before the security feed loaded on his phone. The grainy night vision clip showed everything. Sophia stepping out the side door, bag over her shoulder, humming softly to herself. The black van rolling forward. 2 masked men jumping out. One grabbing her from behind, arm like a steel band around her waist. The other clamping a gloved hand over her mouth. Her body jerking hard. Fighting. Lorenzo's tires screamed as he tore out of the garage. He watched the feed while driving 90 through red lights. Saw her stomp down on one attacker's foot. Heard the muffled grunt. Saw her elbow snap back into the second man's throat. Saw her bite down on fingers until blood dripped. Saw her slash with her keys, vicious, desperate arcs that caught flesh. Saw her break free and sprint back inside. Heard the alarm wail as she slammed the panel. The van peeled away. By the time Lorenzo roared into the alley 12 minutes later, police were already there. Lights flashing red and blue against wet brick. 2 patrol cars. An ambulance. Sophia sat on the cold pavement, back against the wall, knees drawn up. A paramedic knelt beside her, shining a light in her eyes. Her lip was split. Blood dried at the corner of her mouth. Hair wild and damp from the drizzle. Hands shaking as she clutched the foil blanket around her shoulders. But her eyes, God, her eyes, were blazing. Alive. Furious. Beautiful. Lorenzo killed the engine and strode toward her. Cops moved to block him until they recognized his face. Then they parted. He dropped to one knee in front of her, close enough to see the faint bruises blooming on her throat where fingers had dug in. His voice came out raw. Broken. Sophia. She looked up. For the first time since he'd known her, there was no armor in her gaze. No challenge. Just bone-deep exhaustion and something that looked painfully like betrayal. "You're late, Lorenzo," she whispered. The words weren't loud, but they shattered him. He reached out, slow, careful, wanting to touch her face, her hair, anything to prove she was real and breathing. She flinched. Actually flinched away from him. His hand froze mid-air. The paramedic cleared his throat. "She's okay. Shock mostly. Minor cuts. We want to take her in for observation." Sophia shook her head. "I'm fine." She pushed herself up, blanket falling away. Stood on unsteady legs. Lorenzo rose with her, instinctively stepping closer to steady her. She put a hand out, palm against his chest. Stopped him cold. "Don't." One word. Quiet. Final. Her palm burned through his shirt straight into his heart. He couldn't breathe. She looked him dead in the eye. "This was because of you, wasn't it?" He couldn't lie. Not to her. Not now. Yes. Her jaw tightened. Tears welled, furious ones she refused to let fall. "I handled them tonight," she said, voice trembling but strong. "I handled them because you wouldn't handle this. Whatever this is between us. You just watched. Waited. Let it build until someone else decided to use me to get to you." Each word was a blade. Twisting deeper. "I didn't ask for your world," she went on. "I didn't ask for your rules. Or your guilt. Or your obsession. But I almost paid for it tonight." She stepped around him. Walked toward the ambulance under her own power. Lorenzo stood rooted. Chest heaving. Watching the woman who had become his entire weakness walk away from him again. Only this time, she was bleeding because of it. Marco pulled up then, had followed the alarm too. He took one look at Lorenzo's face and stayed silent. Lorenzo finally moved. Got back in his car. Sat there long after the ambulance lights disappeared. Hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles split. The rule hadn't protected her. It had almost killed her. His hesitation, his cowardice, had put her in that van. And she'd saved herself. Without him. Because he was too afraid to choose. He started the engine. Looked at the blood on the alley wall where she'd fought. Felt something inside him snap clean in two. No more waiting. No more rules. He was done losing the women he couldn't even finish the thought. But he knew what he had to do now. Even if she hated him for it. Even if it started a war. He would break every promise he'd ever made to himself. For her. If you're feeling that ache in your chest right now, if this moment just broke you a little, hit that like button. Share it if it hurt. Subscribe because Chapter 8 is where Lorenzo finally stops holding back, and everything burns. Comment. Can he ever fix this? And where are you watching? Sophia didn't come back to work for 4 days. No call. No text. The manager said she'd asked for personal time. Lorenzo didn't push, he knew why. He had 2 men watching her apartment from a distance. Not close enough to scare her. Just close enough to make sure no van ever pulled up again. He didn't sleep much either. Every time he closed his eyes he saw the bruises on her throat. Heard her say "you're late." Felt her palm against his chest pushing him away. On the 5th night, she showed up. Not for a shift. She walked into La Perla at 9 p.m., when the place was full. Heads turned, she was in jeans, boots, leather jacket zipped high, hair loose and wild. No uniform. No smile. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on him. Lorenzo was at his usual table, mid-conversation with Marco and a supplier. He stopped talking the second she started walking toward him. Every step was deliberate. She stopped right in front of his table. Marco stood halfway, unsure. Lorenzo lifted one hand. Sit down. Marco Saturday. Sophia didn't wait for an invitation. She pulled out a chair and sat across from Lorenzo, close, knees almost touching his under the table. The supplier excused himself fast. Marco stayed, but kept his eyes on the tablecloth. Sophia leaned forward, placed a small flash drive on the white linen between them. I did some digging, she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but he heard the tremor underneath. After the other night, I wanted to know exactly whose mess I almost died in. Lorenzo's stomach dropped. He didn't touch the drive. Old news articles, she went on. Police reports that got buried. Photos from 8 years ago. A woman named Elena Russo. Bartender at one of your clubs. Kidnapped. Murdered. Pieces sent to you. Her eyes never left his. Then I found the connection between you and the gallows. The war that followed. The bodies. The piece that only happened after you paid them blood money and territory. She paused. Let it sink in. I know who you are now, Lorenzo. Not boss. Not Mr. Ricky. Just his name, spoken like a verdict. I know what you do. How you clean money through this place. Through 10 others. I know about the men who disappear when they cross you. I know you've killed people with your own hands. The restaurant noise felt miles away. Marco shifted uncomfortably. Lorenzo couldn't look away from her. He waited for fear in her eyes. For disgust. For her to stand up and walk out forever. It was worse. She looked betrayed. Like he'd lied to her personally. Like he'd touched her with blood-stained hands and never told her. You sat there every night, she said, voice dropping even lower. Watching me. Wanting me. Sending gifts. Getting jealous when I left with someone else. And the whole time you were carrying this. She tapped the flash drive once. This ghost. This guilt. This rule you made because you got her killed. Her words sliced clean through him. You weren't protecting me by staying away, she whispered. You were protecting yourself. Again. Lorenzo's throat burned. He wanted to explain. To tell her about the nights he couldn't breathe thinking she might end up like Elena. About how every time she walked past him his heart stopped. About how he'd rather die than let history repeat. But the words wouldn't come. Because she was right. Sophia leaned closer. Close enough that he smelled her scent, spice and rain and fury. Close enough that her knee pressed deliberately against his under the table. The contact was electric. But this time it wasn't desire alone. It was war. You think you're the only one who gets to decide what happens to me? She asked softly. Her eyes were glossy now, anger and hurt shining bright. You think your world is so big and dark that I should just fall into it because you finally choose to reach. Her knee pressed harder. His hand twitched on the tablecloth, wanting to grab her. Pull her across the table, crush his mouth to hers, make her feel everything he couldn't say. He didn't move. She noticed. Her lips curved, not a smile. Something sharper. I'm not her, Lorenzo. The name again. Like a weapon. I'm not waiting to be saved. Or claimed. Or broken by your mistakes. She stood slowly. The knee contact broke. Cold rushed in where her warmth had been. Sophia looked down at him one last time. Eyes blazing. Body radiating challenge. Sexual tension so thick it hurt to breathe. You want me, she said, voice barely above a whisper but clear as a gunshot. Then stop hiding behind your dead and your rules. Come get me like a man who isn't terrified of losing. She turned and walked out. Every head in the room followed her. Lorenzo sat frozen. Marco finally exhaled. Boss, you okay? No. He wasn't. The power he'd spent years building, the fear, the control, the untouchable myth, had just crumbled in front of half his world. Because one woman looked him in the eye and saw everything. And instead of running, she threw it back in his face. Dared him. The obsession wasn't one-sided anymore. It was mutual. Dangerous. And heading straight toward collision. Lorenzo picked up the flash drive. closed his fist around it. For the first time in years, he felt something stronger than guilt. Need. Raw, reckless, unstoppable. He was done waiting. Lorenzo found her 3 nights later. Not at the restaurant. Not at her apartment. At a quiet bar across town, one she'd never mentioned, but he'd learned about from the men watching her. She sat alone at the far end of the counter, nursing a glass of red wine, scrolling on her phone like the world hadn't shifted under her feet. He walked in alone. No Marco. No backup. The bar was half empty. Soft jazz playing. A few heads turned when he entered. People sensed power even when it was trying to be quiet. Sophia looked up as he approached. Her expression didn't change. No surprise. No fear. Just steady eyes. He stopped beside her stool. "Didn't think you'd show your face to me again," she said, voice low. "I needed to see you." She set the phone down. Turned fully toward him. Close enough that her knee brushed his thigh. The contact sent heat straight through him. But her eyes were cold. "What do you want, Lorenzo?" He kept his voice down. "Protection. My men on you 24/7. A new place if you want it. Safer building. My name on you so no one touches you again." He paused. "Me. Only me. No more dates. No more other men." He laid it out plain. Exclusivity. Control. Ownership wrapped in safety. Sophia listened without interrupting. Then she laughed. Soft. Sharp. Heads at the bar glanced over. "You still don't get it," she said. She leaned in. Close enough that her breath grazed his jaw. "I don't want your protection. I don't want to be your kept woman. I don't want to trade my freedom for your guilt." Her hand came up, slow, fingers brushing the scar on his cheek. The touch was light. But it burned. "I want truth," she whispered. "Not ownership." Lorenzo's jaw locked. He caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Held it there between them. "Truth is I can't breathe without knowing you're safe," he said. "Truth is I'll kill anyone who tries what they did again. Truth is I want you in my bed, in my life, wearing my name like armor." Her eyes flashed. She pulled her hand free. Stood up. Now they were chest to chest. The bar noise faded. "And the truth is," she said, voice steady and deadly quiet, "I don't belong to you. I never will." She reached into her jacket pocket. Pulled out a small envelope. Dropped it on the bar between them. Lorenzo frowned. Opened it. Inside, a USB drive. And a single printed photo. His blood went cold. The photo was old, grainy, pulled from a security feed 8 years ago. Him, younger, dragging a body out of a warehouse trunk at 3 a.m. blood on his shirt. Face clear. Unmistakable. A murder the police never solved. One that would put him away for life if it surfaced now. He looked up slowly. Sophia met his gaze. No triumph in her eyes. Just resolve. "I kept digging after the flash drive," she said. "Found more than old articles. Found this. And copies. With lawyers. With journalists who hate men like you." She let that sink in. "One word from me, Lorenzo, and your empire crumbles. Not from the gallows. From me." The final humiliation. The untouchable mafia boss, brought to his knees by the woman he couldn't control. In public, no less. Half the bar pretending not to watch. His authority cracking right there on a wooden stool. He stared at the photo. Then at her. Voice rough. "You'd destroy me." Sophia's eyes softened. "Just a fraction. Not if you don't force me to." She stepped closer. Close enough that her body pressed lightly against his. Heat flared between them again, sharp, painful. Sexual tension twisted into something darker. Emotional warfare. "I'm not your redemption," she whispered. "I'm not your punishment either. I'm just me. And if you want any part of that, you come as a man. Not a king." Her hand brushed his chest, once. Then she stepped back. Walked past him toward the door. Hips swaying. Leaving him standing there. Envelope in his hand. Empire hanging by a thread he never saw coming. Lorenzo didn't follow. Couldn't. Because for the first time in his life, he had no power. No move. No control. Just raw, aching need for the one woman who could end him with a phone call. And the terrifying realization that he might let her. If it meant keeping her. The bar door swung shut behind her. Lorenzo stood frozen. Breathing hard. Completely, utterly humbled. And more obsessed than ever. Lorenzo waited for her on the pier again. Same spot. Same cold wind off the water. Same hour when the city felt asleep and honest. He'd sent one message. Simple, no demands. Pier. Midnight. Just talk. He didn't know if she'd come. But she did. Sophia walked up the weathered boards at 12:07 a.m. Coat collar turned up, hands deep in pockets. Hair loose, curls moving with the breeze. Eyes locked on him from 30 feet away. No fear. No surrender. Just her. She stopped 3 feet from him. Close enough to feel. Far enough to leave. Neither spoke for a long moment. The water slapped the posts below. Finally, she broke it. You look like hell. He almost smiled. So do you. She didn't. Instead, she pulled the USB drive from her pocket, the one with the photo, the one that could end him, and held it between 2 fingers. I could have sent this out already, she said. One email. Your whole life in prison. Your men scattered. Everything you built gone. Lorenzo nodded once. I know. She waited. He took one step closer. I'm not here to beg, he said. Or bargain. Or threaten. Another step. Now the wind carried her scent straight into him. Spice. Skin. Fury. I'm here because you were right. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. About everything. He stopped just short of touching her. The rule wasn't strength. It was fear. I thought if I never touched you, never let myself have you, I could keep the past from repeating. Keep you breathing. His voice dropped. I was wrong. Sophia's eyes searched his face. Looking for the trick. The power play. She didn't find it. The real risk was never my hands on you, he said quietly. It was this. He pressed his palm flat over his own heart. Needing you. Waking up thinking about you. Going to sleep hating myself for it. Wanting you so much it feels like dying when you walk away. He let his hand fall. That's what destroys men like me. Not bullets. Not rivals. Needing someone more than power. The wind whipped between them. Sophia's breath came faster. Eyes glossy. But she didn't move. Not yet. You think saying that fixes anything? She asked. Voice low. Raw. No, he said. It doesn't fix a damn thing. It just makes it real. He reached into his coat. Pulled out a small envelope of his own. Held it out. She didn't take it. What is it? Everything you'd need, he said. Bank accounts. Safe houses. New names. Enough money to disappear anywhere. Alone. No one would ever find you. Not the gallows. Not me. He set it on the railing beside her. Left it there. I'll walk away tonight if that's what you choose. I'll burn every camera. Call off every man. Let you live free of my world. His voice cracked, just once. But if you stay. He stepped into her space. Until their coats brushed. Until her warmth bled into him. Until he could feel her tremble. If you stay, I won't own you. I won't cage you. I won't make you safe by controlling you. He leaned in. Forehead almost touching hers. Breath mingling. I'll just need you. Every day. Every night. And I'll spend the rest of my life earning the right to stand next to you. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Sophia stared up at him. Tears finally spilled. One, then another. She didn't wipe them away. Her hand rose slowly. Fingers brushed his scar. Then cupped his jaw. Pulled him down. Their lips met. Not crashing. Not desperate. Soft. Deliberate. A kiss that tasted like salt and surrender and beginning. When they parted, forehead still touching, she whispered against his mouth. I'm not forgiving you. I know. I'm not trusting you yet. I know. I'm not yours. He smiled, small, broken, hopeful. Then let me spend every day becoming someone you could be. She kissed him again. Deeper this time. Hands sliding into his coat. Bodies pressing close. The envelope on the railing stayed untouched. The USB in her pocket stayed silent. For now. They stood wrapped together on the pier until the sky started to lighten. Two people who could destroy each other. Choosing not to. Yet. The war with the gallows was coming. The past wasn't finished. The leverage still existed. But in that grey dawn, with her in his arms and his heart finally open, Lorenzo understood. Touching her had never been the danger. Needing her, truly, recklessly, without armor, was. And he'd never felt more alive. Season 2 starts the second you demand it. They survived the night, but the real war begins now. If this ending wrecked you, if you felt that kiss, if you need to know what happens next, hit like, comment Season 2, and tell me where you're watching from. This story isn't over until you say it is.